Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Clock. I'm Alex.
I'm Cory.
And we have with us a very, very awesome and special guest today. She is the faculty advisor for AMA here at USF. She's one of the marketing professors here at USF. And she's just a really cool person. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Loran Jarrett.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So for those of us who don't know, or for those of them who don't know what you do, what you're up to, can you give us a little bit of a summary of yourself?
Sure. So I've been teaching here at USF for about 5 years. Before that, I taught at University of Tampa as an adjunct. At the same time, I was getting my doctorate and vice president of a local marketing agency that worked on cool accounts like the Ritz-Carlton. And then before that, I owned my own agency for a number of years. So I'm a Tampa native. Here at USF, I teach a lot of courses for undergrads. I teach digital marketing, basic marketing, the capstone class. I teach at the graduate level. I teach at TGH. So I'm also the director of a practice center, which we're totally about to revamp that. It's going to be super cool what we're doing. We're actually making it so that businesses who want to hire students for projects, that we can introduce them to students to get paid for projects. So that's we're working on that right now too.
That sounds great.
That's amazing. I mean, hey.
Stay tuned.
Everyone's always looking out for job opportunities, but I feel like you neglected to mention your most difficult and important responsibility.
Yep.
Being a mom.
Yes, I am a mom. I have 3 boys, so there are a lot of Nerf bullets around my house.
Oh, yeah.
Wrestling all the time. I'm not allowed to have nice things apparently because they all break, but it's a good time and I wouldn't have it any other way.
That's one of the questions I wanted to ask was, so in balancing, I know a lot of people who try to get into the workplace environment have to worry about the balance between finding a job, ascending the corporate ladder, and finding time to, start a family, get their personal life in order. So how do you tend to approach maintaining a good work-life balance?
So first off, it is a facade. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
It is let's just cut to the chase.
We're all faking it.
Yeah. Having that balance is hard. It's something that I think everybody aspires to. But the reality is that, especially as a mom, and especially in the very beginning of being a mom, I mean, it was I felt like I was failing at everything.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm being honest, right? Because you feel like you can't be 100% at this, you can't be 100% at this. And so things evolve. But I think, after a number of years now, I'm getting into a better place with it. But I really think the key and kind of nugget of advice that I would give people is to just create boundaries that work for you, right?
Okay.
So for me, I know a lot of people like to do business via text and things like that. That's a hard boundary for me simply because I push everything to email. And the reason is because then when I go into my email, I'm in work mode, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the middle of cooking dinner, hanging out, and I get some text message asking me a question about something, and then I spiral for 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's for me, that's kind of how I'm able to block my
Yeah.
life.
Okay.
And
that
it works for
constant
me.
flip flopping from between leisure and work mode. Yeah. I very much dread that as well.
Yeah, right?
I don't want to have to
Especially
do something
during the
that.
pandemic, I feel like it was a lot worse for a lot of people where it was you're at home, so you want to be at home, but also you have work to do, so it's difficult to.
Oh man, okay, so March 2nd was when the pandemic hit, and the only reason, or at least in Florida, Tampa, the only reason I know that because it was my birthday, right?
Wow.
And
that
I know,
sucks.
happy birthday to me.
Okay.
So I at the time was 7 months pregnant.
Oh.
Okay, so it was a wild time. So school shut down, so I've got little kids running around.
Yeah.
I've got now I got to transition all my classes to online. I'm the size of a whale. So yeah, it was a time. It was a time for sure.
Yeah, COVID absolutely ruined my ability to do any work in my room. I just shuffling from my bed to my room to my bathroom to all back and forth. I can't do homework in my room anymore. I'm just so distracted. I just want any single thing will just take me out of work mode instantly. I'm oh, that's dirty. I guess I'll clean it. Or
I'm totally feeling on that. I'm I need to rewire my house.
Yep. So I have to I have to go to the library. I have to go to some new weird area to sit down and lock in and do homework and stuff. So I understand for sure.
Yeah, but I think that's good that you know that about yourself, right? And I think that's I was looking over some of the questions that you all had, and as I was just mentally batting them around, a lot of it just has to know, kind of owning up to what your strengths and your weaknesses are,
Yeah.
who you are as a person, right? I'm the same way. When I worked from home, I had to have my workspace in the furthest room in the house, and I would close the door.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because,
And no one's allowed in.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
It's like you're going to the office, but you just have to walk instead of, driving half an
100%.
hour.
Oh,
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, you make it sound good. You mentioned teaching at UT, and I saw on your LinkedIn that you also went to FSU. So I wanted to ask, one of my questions was, what do you think about USF's marketing program? What do you think the highlight of USF's marketing program is, having been to all these other places?
Yeah. So couple things, right? So number one, I'm in my 40s, right? I'm older than Google. So
is that true?
It is. I told my kids
that's a stat that I couldn't.
I told my kids that the other day, and they were just like,
that would explode.
Right?
eBay's like 30 years old.
Wow.
It's crazy.
I'm older than eBay. So I say that because marketing has evolved so much, right?
Yeah.
Since I went to FSU. So, I mean, awesome program there. UT, so I had a gap of 10 years between my undergrad and my graduate. And for whatever it's worth, highly recommend some type of gap like that, because you can then, when you're learning in the classroom and you haven't really experienced it, you're in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
And so once you're actually able to apply in practice and mentally, oh yeah, we did that, it's like you appreciate what you're learning so much more, right? And so so when I got my master's at UT, I was in that place where I could do that. So I really enjoyed it. But it was different, right? And then, but I will say, just for entertainment, and Alex has heard this story because he had one of my classes, but so I had no intention of going into education. If somebody would have told me 20 years ago, hey, you're gonna be in higher ed, I would have been like, you need a straitjacket. That's not gonna happen.
All right.
That's not on my bingo card, right? But I ended up, when I was getting my master's, I basically, the head of the marketing department there, he became a mentor of mine, and still we're really close to this day. And I was kind of giving him some crap one day, and I'm like, man, what you guys are teaching is not really what's going on, right? And he basically told me to shut up.
Yeah.
If you're so smart, why don't you do it, tough guy?
That's exactly what it was. And it was like, all right, you want to teach a class? Fine, you teach a class. And I'm like, well, then I will.
Yeah.
And then that's how I got into teaching.
Wow.
Right? Not a story that I don't think anybody else has, but then I ended up just genuinely enjoying it. And then, it just really gave me fulfillment that I hadn't gotten anywhere else. And so probably after a year, I was like, man, how do I do this full time, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up pursuing it. But going back to your question, USF, to me, the program here does hold kind of a special place in my heart, because part of it's because I'm very actively involved in helping to adjust the curriculum.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the reasons that I got into higher ed is because I want to bridge that gap. That gap between what happens in, the real world versus what you learn in the classroom, that gap drives me insane.
Yeah.
So I am constantly, if anybody's taken a class of mine, that's what I'm aiming to bridge. The practice center that I mentioned earlier, aiming to bridge. We're actually have some really exciting things coming up with the USF marketing curriculum.
Okay.
Where
Can you give us a sneak peek?
Yeah, I'm an exclusive leak
for the listeners of the pod.
So we are we're basically we've adjusted it to almost the end in mind, right? So there's going to be 2 main tracks that you can go down. And so both of them are analytics driven.
Okay.
One's kind of more digital marketing side. One's kind of more sales side.
Yeah, because I know you can get a focus in digital marketing, and it's a little bit different. I think that's what I have.
Yes, you get a concentration, but really it's you just take 2 classes. One can be an internship, and there's just opportunity for it to be better, right? And so that's why we adjusted it. So, but things in the academic world take a really long time. Sometimes it's like turning the Titanic.
Yeah,
so it's so we've set the sails up. And it's moving, so we're excited about it.
Sure, yeah. Talking about that gap between what you learn in the classroom and what you do in real life, I feel like from a student's perspective, you can definitely feel that gap as well from instructors. There've been some instructors that I've taken where I'm I feel like this is mostly in a vacuum, sort of academia based instruction, and then there are some professors I've taken where I'm oh, they've done real work. They've been in high positions at an agency or they've done the grunt work, like they know what I'm going to be doing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So you can definitely feel it as a student as well. So I'm glad there's at least some push to sort of bridge that gap.
Yeah, well,
that's
listen,
exciting for me to hear.
When you have an awesome, instructor, professor, definitely give them a positive review.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. Like I think a lot of students don't realize how much weight those reviews carry.
Really?
Oh, they carry big time weight. Oh yeah. So they're like for us to get promoted if we ever wanted to work somewhere.
Is
like,
that the like the course ratings that you do on Canvas, or is that just like Rate My Professor or like random stuff?
No, nobody cares about Rate My Professor.
Okay.
But,
I figured that's why it shocked me so much. As I was like, they can't care that.
Because one professor I really like is getting review bombed. So.
Yeah, Alex was talking about that last episode.
Yeah, but he's kind of interesting with how he teaches the class, but it's a whole different tangent.
Yeah, we'll circle back to that later. Yeah. But I'm talking about the Canvas evaluations.
Yeah.
Because those go directly to our boss. They're like I'm up for promotion, which I'm super pumped about, but legit, all my reviews from the last 5 years are getting looked at. So, yeah. So, anyway.
Well, hey, I left you 5 stars. So.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking specifically about classes and stuff, so a lot of students in your classes, sometimes they pass through. You've seen a lot of people at a lot of different levels because, digital marketing, you're getting some of the higher level classes or some of the higher level students. You're getting the capstone students. You're getting the basic marketing students who are new to the spot. And I want to ask, what types of students have impressed you the most? And where have there been situations where you feel like, even though you're the professor and the teacher, you feel like you're learning from them in some sense?
Yeah. So first off, I learn a ton from students. And I think that anybody who's in education would be doing a disservice if they weren't humble enough to be like, I'm learning from the students as well. Because, especially in marketing, I mean, like it moves so fast. I mean, you all are familiar with platforms that I'm not. You know what I mean? Like, I love, like, I'm working with a student on the practice center. She's kind of stepping up. And, like, yesterday we were kind of batting around different platforms, and she was telling me all about it, right? And, it's important to be humble enough to know that you don't know it all, right? Yeah. Every semester I learn and grow from students, and I'm happy about that. As far as students that have stood out in different ways and have impressed me, I would say, like, every semester I get a couple of students that they just like, you can just tell in their hearts that they just want to be the best version of themselves. And they will come up to me and they will just ask for genuine feedback, right? And like how they can improve. And it has nothing to do with their grade necessarily, right? But they're just like, hey, I'm working on this, and they just kind of want to talk through something, or like they had an interview, or whatever it might be. But they're just like, they genuinely want to grow. And I think that that impresses me, because that's hard, right? Because you're essentially like, that you're going to hear something that you as a person need to improve on, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard for anybody, no matter what age you are, right? But like overcoming that like fear of failure, so to say, and that fear that like, if I'm like, well, you could make more eye contact when you do that, like whatever, right? It's just that they're willing to just really own up and grow. The other thing is that I can often tell when a student has had real experience, right? Like depending upon their job, like especially like I get a number of students that like they work in like the family business or something like that. And it's really enjoyable to have them, because their perspective is just beyond the classroom, right? And it's just it's again like where that like practice and academia kind of come together and form something special. But I mean, at the end of the day, I have had so many awesome students, and like I just love getting to be a part of their journey.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I feel like, especially like with a lot of students, you get the ones that are a lot more, they're performing super highly, but they're still the ones who are asking for advice. And then the ones who are failing are the ones that are sitting there and just, not really caring, never really have a conversation with you, just sort of sit at the back and take the low grade. Yeah.
So my husband and I talk about the give a crap meter. We use a different word instead of crap. But it's like, with that meter, right? Like either you care or you don't. And like, that's kind of hard to change, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so, often when people don't do something, it's either because they don't know how, or they don't care. Like, so you can fix the don't know how, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's like where students, that's where like AMA, like I enjoy it because it's students that are, they're volunteering, they're making a conscientious decision that they want to build their resume, get it, whatever it might be, right? Whatever their motivation is. And same with those students who come up and ask like how they can improve, right? Like they care, right? And they want to keep trying. And then, the ones that just don't, I mean, that's a pretty hard change, right? And that's they just need to do their own soul searching, and hopefully they adjust, and as we say in the South, bless their heart.
Yeah, talking about the meter, I can normally tell like what my level on the meter is gonna be within like the first 2 weeks of like anything. Like first 2 weeks of a class, if I'm in the class, and like I can tell exactly where the meter is going to be, and sometimes it's different. But I'm loving my classes so far. We haven't we didn't talk too much about, or we talked a little bit about it last episode. But no, my classes are still awesome. I'm loving my classes this semester.
The higher level classes are super awesome and super fun.
This is the whole point we're here. Like I'm so excited. I'm in the meat.
That's great. That's great. I'm happy for you.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I can do one of mine. So I always ask about networking because networking is this like weird mythical thing that every class talks about, that we get like preached about all the time, and that's this like never-ending search to like expand your network and get connections and do all this stuff. And there's always these rules that you have to do. And as a student, it looks a lot like going to any of these like networking like student events, like you awkwardly put on a suit that's too big for you and then talk to somebody that's like worked in a real office. And I want to know how networking changes like as you go throughout your career. Like how has networking changed for you as somebody who's like very much deep in marketing?
So first off, like when you're in college and you're going to those type of fairs, right? The recruiters really is who they are, right? Who's on the flip side. I mean, they are trained to chat it up, right? And to engage, and they want to get to know you and stuff like that, right? I will tell you that beyond college, you won't go to one of those again.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right? And so really, I mean, after college, it's like, whether like there's some kind of an event that's going on, it's, just a happy hour, like whatever, right? Like, it's that you have to go and chat it up with somebody. And, the reality is like, in some ways it's a little more challenging because you don't know if that person's going to be cool and chatty on the other side, right? Okay, so I'm going to give you my tips that I give for networking.
Sure.
Okay. So number one is find the longest line. Okay, so doesn't matter what it's for. It can be, now for women, it could be the bathroom. It could be, to get a drink. It could be like the buffet, whatever it is. Here's why. You don't care about what's at the end of that line.
Yeah.
Okay? It's simply because when you're standing next to somebody, you have a better chance and it's easier to like just kind of have a conversation. Right?
It feels more natural.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just kind of easier because you're both standing there and you're both at a networking event. Right. And so it's easier to do that. The other thing is, I don't know if it was just like a teacher that I had in elementary school that just kind of ingrained in my head the who, what, where, when, why, right? Ask questions that start with those because they're open-ended, right? And so, if you ask that close-ended question, you could get somebody who's just, nervous and they might, yes, no, you know what I mean? But if you're like, oh, what brought you here? Or how do you know the host? Or, why are you supporting this cause? Right? Like it just kind of opens things up for more. So to me, those are two big things. But the networking, I mean, at the end of the day, you're still having a goal as to why you're doing it, right? Why is this worth your time? And, you still are just simply trying to connect with people, right? The other thing that I've done that has really helped me with networking in general, and this isn't like at an actual networking event, but I know that this has helped me build my career, and that's that I like to connect people, right? So when I meet somebody, right, if I'm like, Alex, what are you into, right? And I learned that he's into podcasts, right? And then, I meet somebody else, like, Robin, sales, right? And I'm like, hey, Robin, and then I connect them because what it does is instead of me being like, hey, how are you doing, Alex? I hope everything's well. And, it's kind of like this weird, awkward email, right? I've now connected them. He remembers me. I kind of did them a solid. And we're in a good spot.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a way to touch base with somebody and, you know.
But there's like something tangible to it. It's not just like, you're not just like keeping up the maintenance of it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So that's some stuff that I've done.
That's great. It's kind of funny you talk about the connection point because like I feel like for a little while me and him had a thing going where like I'd be the person who goes out into the world, goes to a billion different clubs, signing up for everything on Bulls Connect.
Alex is very active.
Yeah. A lot more in my previous years than now. Because now, you know, I'm a busy person. But I used to be like going out and connecting people into the world, bringing people in, and then I introduce them to Cory.
Yeah.
And Cory is the one who makes them stay because it's like they build that connection. And I feel like we have a lot of like shared friendships and stuff that are built off of that. So it's great, you know, solidifying those bonds and building those connections with other people.
The other thing that I like that you both have said is it's kind of like, you know, the different personality types just can build relationships, right? I get a lot of students that are like, you know, real introverted, that are like real freaked out, right? To network. And it's like, no. Like, don't make it some goal that you got to talk to like 15 people, right? Just build one connection at the event and you're good, right? And most likely that's going to be a deeper connection than the person who popped around to 15 different people. Yep. You know?
It's like a seed. It sprouts into many different micro connections, like a big, beautiful tree.
Yes.
But speaking of tree of connections, so in your capstone class that you teach, currently you're working with Busch Gardens. And in the semester that I did last semester, we were working with Splitsville and a bunch of different things. So you have a lot of connections in the Tampa area. And I wanted to ask, how do you... I mean, we sort of kind of got into it there where it's, you know, you want to connect people. Yeah. But how do you maintain those connections and make sure that, you know, you're keeping things going, keeping things strong, making it feel like maybe one side doesn't feel like they're being used, one side doesn't feel like it's inequitable. How do you keep it equitable and how do you keep those connections
Does it help
strong?
that you're a Tampa native as well? Like you have your fingers in all these like...
It does help. It does help, right? But I will say that even if I was a Tampa native, you know, the kind of the key to it, right, is whatever that first meeting is, it needs to be solid, right? Yeah. And part of what I mean by that is like, if I, like, so for example, with Busch Gardens, right? So the woman who's VP of marketing over there, Alicia Ross, I actually know her when she was with VP of marketing for Coca-Cola before.
Oh, wow.
That's huge, yeah.
Yeah, so I actually worked with her on a capstone class with Coca-Cola. Right?
Oh.
And so I say that, and then I met her because I actually was going to be doing some consulting for Coca-Cola Florida, right?
Oh, there you go.
So the reality is that the reason I walked you back to that is because had the very first thing on consulting not gone well, she wouldn't have worked with me with anything else.
Yeah.
Right? So I think a lot of it, like there are strategies and tactics and like, you know, just kind of business acumen that you can do. But like if I really had to boil it down to something is like when I tell people I'm going to do something, it's going to happen.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Like, and so when I work with somebody, like it goes well for the most part, right? And like if I screw up, I admit that I screw up and, you know, do my best that I can to you know, be honest about whatever the situation is, right? But if it's like, you know, if I'm like, hey, we're going to do this and I'm going to send you this by this date, like it's going to happen, right? So like my word and my reputation, I've really gone above and beyond to try to, you know, make that have value. You know what I mean? And so when I want to work with somebody again, then I can. And they're happy to because they know it's going to go well. Yeah. And I know like that, I know that probably sounds like a big thing and it's very important, but I think I want the reason I'm kind of going down this path a little bit is because I want people to know and you all to know, like, it's not hard to do. And really, you will stand out in this business world by just doing what you say you're going to do.
Like, do good work.
Yeah. Like, but it doesn't have to be perfect work. It's just like that you do what you say you're going to do. Because I can't even tell you how many times people, they don't follow up with an email. Like, you know, they say, oh, I'm going to do this. And it just falls on deaf ears. Do you know what I mean? So, like, building that reputation and having your word mean something, you'll stand out in the top 20% easy. Like, that simple thing. And like that's not an intelligence thing, right? Like, that is just really like
it's effort.
Yeah.
Right.
You can make a commitment to be like consistent and reliable.
Exactly. It makes all the difference in the world. I know I kind of got off tangent. I hope I answered the question.
No,
I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
You answered it great. honestly don't remember the question either.
Oh, perfect. All right, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question for more specifically for AMA, right?
Yeah.
Alex and I are relatively new to AMA. We joined it sort of late. That's on us. But like, what do you think? Because our first meeting was like right after ICC.
Yeah.
So we got to see like all the ICC stuff.
Yeah.
We got to see all the newest rankings, like all the updated stuff. And so I wanted to ask you as like the advisor, what do you think it is that makes us like so high rated among like all these schools? And what do you think the other higher ranking schools do differently that we could learn from as well?
So I think we make a choice to invest in our students.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things that I end up talking with leadership about a lot, and we're having the discussions right now because ICC, right?
Yeah.
And it costs $765 per person to send them, right? We're going to spend about $20,000 sending students to ICC, right?
A lot of money.
And it's a lot of money, right? And we work really hard to raise all that money, right? But, you know, one of the things that I talk to leadership about, I'm like, this is a nonprofit. The whole reason that we're raising money is to invest it back into our students, right? And so, like, we had the conversation yesterday. Like, if there are some younger, like freshmen, sophomore that you see a lot of potential in, you know, like let's try to cover something for them because maybe that'll help them attend ICC.
Yeah,
right?
give them that like kick.
Right,
Yeah.
because one of the things that I learned, and I was given this advice by my predecessor, a woman named Jill Solomon. She was the AMA faculty advisor for 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then her husband was faculty advisor before that for a number of years.
Okay.
And
It's a
so-
dynasty.
It is.
Yeah.
And then there's also a woman named Vicky Panzer who was in the midst of that as well. But all three of those people are incredible individuals, right? And they just have a passion for AMA. But Jill had told me, she's like, listen, you want to get as many people to ICC as you can because there is something that happens when they go to ICC.
Yeah.
And I have watched it over and over again. And so, you know, like I think last year we were, if not the biggest chapter there, like one of the biggest chapters there. So, I mean, we walk in with a herd, right? And, but it's awesome, you know, for multiple reasons, but it's like once the students go to ICC, it's like it all clicks, right?
Yeah.
Like they see like we're competing internationally, right? Like they have fun with it. Like they realize, because I think like at USF, right? I mean, there's 7,000 students in the Muma College of Business, right?
Yeah.
I think there's about 700 marketing majors, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, if we kind of have like the top 10%, right? Is kind of how I like to say it. And so I think that when you go and you compete internationally, it's like, oh, like there's a lot of like-minded people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that it's kind of like, oh, these are the people that I've been wanting to be around, right?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so it all just kind of clicks. So I invest, it's like, we got to invest back in our students, right? It's like they work hard. We want to invest as hard as well. And then also one of the biggest things that, you know, I know that I do at least is like, the worst phrase ever is we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
It like makes me want to twitch a little bit. And so, you know, and this is where like learning from students also comes in, right? Like, I mean, when we get a solid leadership, I'm like, what do y'all think? What should we do? Right. And like, you know, so almost every single president for AMA has left some kind of legacy.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's been really cool to be a part of. So I think like all of these things just kind of coming together and really listening to what the students want.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting you say that because I know that the way that we structure like our AMA chapter is different from like a lot of other places as well. Like we have a number of people in the e-board, we have assistant directors, like everything is sort of, the hierarchy is a lot more, it's like a lot broader, but it's also like very well defined role wise that I know a lot of other places, like in a lot of other schools don't have.
Yeah,
Like,
not
it's
every
very-
AMA has a podcast, you know?
Yeah, not every AMA
not
has a
at all.
podcast.
Yeah.
Not every AMA has like an assistant director of podcast. Like, we have. It's very like corporately structured, which I think is very cool. I like that a lot.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just it's setting y'all up for success.
Yeah.
Right? Because I look at it, this is a safe space to learn. This is a safe space to like figure out like quirks and things about yourself and what you really like or what you don't like, right? Sometimes is the lesson, right? But it's much better to learn that stuff now versus you get your first job, right? The stakes are much higher.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. One of the things that's also like really nice about AMA is how like the great thing about working with college students is they cycle out every how many years. So it's you're constantly getting in new ideas, and it's just nice seeing that like many people can come through and leave their mark. Yeah. I like that. That's one of the things that's good about AMA.
Yeah.
There's space for people to do that.
Exactly. And there's space, like no one's going to get stuck in their role and just, I'm sitting here for 10 years because, I have tenure and I don't really want to do anything after because my passion left a while ago. It's just, it's interesting. It's nice. But speaking of our AMA members, we have a list of questions that we've been given by AMA members who want to ask Dr. Jarrett a few different things. So a few different questions. First and foremost, the most important question of all, what's your spirit animal?
You're going to laugh.
Oh.
This was my favorite animal as a kid, and it's actually my middle son's favorite animal as well, probably because we've talked about this. But it's a white Bengal tiger.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm not going to laugh.
Here's why. Because it's a little bit rare. Right? It looks easy going, but you don't want to mess with it.
Yeah. That's a cool animal.
Right?
That's pretty sick. All right. Next question.
Yes.
So we touched on some of them already. Like, why did you get into education? Should you pursue an MBA? Although clear, like we talked about the MBA thing earlier, you going into your master's program.
Yeah.
What would you say is why should people decide that an MBA is something that they want to do?
So an MBA is awesome, right? It really is. But do not go and do it right after undergrad. Do it, get some practice, like some real business experience under your belt, because it's just going to mean that much more. You're going to just gain so much more value out of it. I had no idea that it would be so valuable and going the route that I did. I mean, it was really unintentional on going that route, but I'm very thankful I did, and I always recommend that to people.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, another super serious question. Who would you have playing you in a biopic?
So I actually got asked this the other day.
No way.
I did, yes.
Oh, we're not original. That's crazy.
No, I'm sorry.
Which AMA member leaked the question?
Who did it?
Actually, you're going to laugh. It was AMA National because I'm on
wow.
the
Okay.
So I had my first AMA National board meeting, so I was asked to be on that. And so they were like speed questions that were totally random. I was like actually nervous when the question, I'm like, oh my gosh, what question is she going to ask me? But that's what she asked me. So my answer was Sandra Bullock.
That makes sense.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I used to get like called that, she looked like me or I look like her all the time. And so I'm like, yeah, she's awesome. I'll take that.
That's great. Solid. Okay. Next question.
Yes.
So how far in advance as a senior should you be applying to jobs?
I would say that when you start your senior year, you need to start that quest. And I know that some people are like, like hearing that, but here's why. Okay. Is because really the jobs start coming out like in September, October. And by like kind of starting that quest, I mean, like make sure your resume is in top shape, right? Like, I mean, because you got to remember with resumes, right? Like when somebody's looking at resumes, they're looking for a reason to weed it out, right? It's not like, oh, this person stands out. It's like, oh, they spelled something wrong, right? Like they're just trying to like sift through, right? So you need to make sure that that is perfect. Because like, I mean, the hundreds and thousands of resumes that I have sifted through in my career, somebody spells something wrong, they're out. Like, it is what it is, right? Because I'm like, you don't have a high attention to detail, and this is the best that I'm going to get from you because you had months to proof this, right? So make sure that everything is in tip-top shape. And then you also, like, I mean, I don't even know if this is offered here, but like when I was in college, I actually, they had an interview space where you could get recorded answering interview questions.
Oh, wow.
And it was like really eye-opening. And I went and did it because I realized I said, like 500 times. And I was like, oh, that's bad. So as I
it's a tough habit to break.
It back. Anyway,
yeah.
But just because they're gonna ask you the same questions, right? Like they're gonna be like, so why did you apply for this job? There's just a handful of questions that you should have down pat, right? The other reason that I say that early is simply because, let's be real, right? By mid-November, you're gonna be like heavy in exams, group projects. December's like holidays, you're home, you're probably going to be a little fried and everybody kind of checks out, right? That's just the honest truth. And then in January, you're going to be like, ugh. And I see so many students. Okay.
That's me.
Exhibit A, right, is like, you're going to start freaking out.
Yeah.
Right? And then, because I've taught the capstone class. I've had seniors every single semester, and I see them just freaking out, right? Because like the amount of pressure that they put on themselves, right? Because, it's like, I got to get a job. I have an internship. I'm taking 5 classes. Like, it's just so much. So if you start a little bit earlier, you can kind of control the controllables a little bit more. The other thing that I would say, and this is just kind of like a sidebar on it, is like, I see students like so stressed about this first job.
Yeah.
And my 2 cents would be, look, you might hate your job and you might be done with it in a year, and that's okay. Like, what you're choosing as a job is not what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? So just get a job, because it's easier to have to find a job
when you have one.
A job, right?
Yeah.
And so, because it's like, if you don't have one and then like 6 months have gone by and you're out of work and you're not in school and you haven't really been doing much, like that's where the questions come in. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
When
what's this little gap in employment?
like, so what have you been doing here? So.
Yeah. Okay. So another question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite memory from back when you were in college?
I had a really good time in college. What was my favorite memory when I was in college? So I was super involved in student organizations. I think I was in like 12 of them. Like something ridiculous, right? Like,
that pains me.
listen. Yeah, I used to like always think like, oh, this is just a crazy time, right? And then I realized I'm the common denominator. So like I own it at this point, right? It's like it's me. I'm the problem, right? And so, but one semester, so I was in a sorority, and I was in charge of intramurals, because I, like, growing up, I played like every sport. Like, I was like that kid that like I played every single sport. I wasn't really, really good at any of them. I was pretty good, but like I played them all. So anyway, so I was in charge of intramurals, and when we started, we were in 12th place, and by the time we ended, we were in 1st. And we had a powder puff football team that we won for FSU, the intramurals, and then I got us funded to go to New Orleans for the championship.
Oh wow!
Whoa!
That's
And
great.
so I was kind of like laughing, thinking about like how often like we're going to New Orleans.
Yeah.
But apparently that's where all the college championship stuff goes.
There you go.
But yeah, so that was like for me, that was like just a really cool memory, because it was like just something that I achieved.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm getting word that we're coming close to time.
Okay.
We want to respect your time. So we're going to close with this question.
Yes.
So what is the number one piece of advice that you would give to any college student who is trying to land employment, trying to better themselves in the professional marketplace? I
would say that it kind of goes back to one of the earlier answers that I gave, and I'm sorry to be repetitive on it, but but it's just really, being solid in doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Like, and then, but on that same note, like, kind of figure out who you want to be. So like, as an example, like if you see an amazing speaker, right, and you're like, man, like I want to meet with that person, right? Like, obviously you can go up to them then and whatnot, but they're probably going to be bombarded with people, right? If you like wrote a handwritten note, I know that sounds a little hokey, won't take you very much time, but you will stand out to that person and you will get in with that person, right? Like, so just going that little bit above and beyond, doing what you say you're going to do. Again, like, people think it's so hard right now to stand out. It's honestly not. It really isn't. Like, and I don't say that in any kind of like derogatory way towards, anything, but it's just like, it's really the same as it's always been. Like, go above and beyond and you'll shine.
Okay.
Cream rises to the top.
Yeah.
Well, we got to start getting back on the clock. Okay. So thank you for coming, Dr. Jarrett.
Yeah,
we really appreciate having you here. So you guys, next week we're going to be talking about Super Bowl ads. So be sure to check in on that episode.
I'm so excited.
It's going to be great because the Super Bowl's this weekend. Who are you rooting for?
Well, I kind of want to go for the underdog just because.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Great answer. Perfect answer.
Yeah.
But,
you know that on YouTube, they've leaked some of the commercials.
Really?
I didn't know that.
I showed some of them in my EMBA class this
Oh.
morning. Yeah. So there's
I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want
know.
spoilers.
I know, right? I felt like I was opening like a Christmas present.
Yeah, like I should be waiting.
Well, hey, we're going to be getting into those next week. But
absolutely.
In the meantime, show up to our general body meetings that happen every Tuesday in BSN 225 at 4:45 p.m. That is Tuesdays, BSN 225 at 4:45 p.m. You can see us. You can see her.
Yep.
And we always have some great guest speakers. But we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.